The dust cloud rose high into the pale orange sky of Kepler 442b. As the massive drilling machines finally came to a stop, Dr. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked down into the deep hole. They had been digging for 3 weeks. Something was down there, something big. "The scanners are going crazy again," said Dr. Lisa Parker, running toward him with her tablet in hand. Her blonde hair was covered in dust from the mining operation, but her blue eyes were bright with excitement. "Whatever is buried down there, it's huge." Jake nodded and looked around at the mixed team of scientists working on the dig site. There were 12 of them total. 4 humans, 3 Valkyrie with their blue skin and tall frames, 2 crystalline beings that looked like walking diamonds, 2 Zephani with their green scales, and 1 Torgan whose rocky skin made him look like a walking mountain. Commander Veltar, the lead Valkyrie scientist, approached them with his usual serious expression. His silver eyes studied the readings on his own device. "The object appears to be artificial," he said in his deep voice. "It measures approximately 2 kilometers in length and 800 meters in width. That's bigger than most coalition." "Battleships," whispered Dr. Carl Watson, another human scientist. His hands shook as he held his scanner. "What could be that big and buried so deep?" The crystalline researcher named Quixanala made a sound like wind chimes as she spoke. "The material composition is unknown to our databases. It appears to shift between different states of matter." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In his 15 years as a xenorchaeologist, he had never encountered anything like this. The Coalition had strict rules about unknown artifacts, especially ones this large. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. "How deep do we need to go to reach it?" he asked. "Another 50 meters," replied Veltar. "But I must warn you, Dr. Morrison, the energy readings are becoming unstable. My superiors have ordered me to contact Coalition Command if we find anything dangerous." "Let's see what we're dealing with first," Jake said. He turned to the drilling crew and gave them the signal to continue. The next day, they broke through. The drill bit suddenly dropped into empty space, and everyone gathered around the hole. Jake was the first to rappel down into the darkness below. His headlamp cut through the blackness as he descended, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull was smooth and seemed to flow like liquid metal, but when Jake touched it with his gloved hand, it felt solid as stone. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with a light that seemed to come from within the metal itself. "My God," he whispered into his radio. "Lisa, you need to see this." One by one, the team members came down to examine the ship. The Valkyrie set up their scanning equipment while the crystalline beings tried to analyze the hull material. The Zephani worked on translating the symbols, and the Torgan used his strength to clear debris from around the vessel, but every piece of equipment they brought near the ship failed. Scanners shut down, computers crashed, and even simple tools stopped working properly. The ship seemed to push back against their technology, creating fields of energy that made their instruments useless. "This is impossible," said Dr. Helen Ross, the team's chief engineer. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and frustration was clear on her freckled face. "The ship is actively interfering with our equipment. It's like it doesn't want to be studied." For 3 days, they tried everything they could think of. They brought in more powerful scanners from their base camp. They tried different frequencies and energy patterns. They even attempted to take samples of the hull material, but their cutting tools couldn't make even a scratch. Veltar grew more concerned each day. "The energy readings are increasing," he reported during their evening meeting. "This artifact may be dangerous. I recommend we seal the excavation site and report our findings to Coalition Command." "We can't give up now," Jake argued. "This could be the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. We need more time to study it." "What if it's a weapon?" asked Dr. Watson nervously. "What if it was buried here for a reason?" The crystalline researcher Quixanala chimed in with her musical voice. "The symbols do not match any known language in our databases. The ship's design is unlike anything in Coalition records. It predates all known civilizations. How old could it be? Asked Lisa. Based on the geological layers above it, I estimate it has been buried for at least 2 million years, replied Quixanala. Possibly much longer. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the ship and its strange symbols. Something about them seemed familiar, though he couldn't place why. He had studied thousands of alien languages and writing systems, but these symbols felt different. They almost seemed to call to him. Before dawn, he made his way back to the excavation site alone. The security lights cast long shadows across the dig area, and the hole looked like a mouth opening into the earth. Jake rappelled down into the darkness, his headlamp the only light in the buried chamber. The ship seemed different in the quiet darkness. The symbols on its hull pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, almost like a heartbeat. Jake walked around the visible portion of the vessel, studying the strange markings. They seemed to change as he watched, shifting and flowing like living things. He stopped in front of what looked like it might be an entrance, though there was no visible door or opening. The symbols here were different, more complex, and somehow more important than the others. Jake found himself reaching out toward them, drawn by an impulse he couldn't explain. "Don't be stupid," he muttered to himself. "You don't know what this thing is?" But his hand kept moving forward. The symbols seemed to pulse brighter as he approached, and he could swear he felt warmth radiating from the hull. Against all his training and common sense, Jake pulled off his glove and placed his bare palm against the alien metal. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The entire ship came alive with light, its symbols blazing like stars. A deep, harmonious sound filled the chamber, not heard but felt in Jake's bones. The smooth hull began to shift and change, creating patterns and openings that hadn't been there moments before. Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding. The ship's lights pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and he realized with growing amazement that it was responding to him. Not to his equipment, not to his technology, but to him personally. An opening appeared in the hull directly in front of him, perfectly sized for a human form. Warm, golden light spilled out from within, and Jake could hear something that sounded almost like music. The ship was inviting him inside. He activated his radio with shaking hands. "Lisa, Veltar, everyone, you need to get down here right now. The ship is awake, and it's responding to human contact." The response came immediately. "Jake, get away from that thing," Lisa's voice crackled through the radio. "We're coming down." But Jake couldn't move. The ship's song was growing stronger, more beautiful, and he felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The ancient ship had waited millions of years for this moment. It had waited for a human to find it, to wake it from its long sleep. And now, finally, its wait was over. Lisa Parker was the first to reach the bottom of the excavation site, her boots hitting the ground just as Jake's radio message ended. She saw him standing in front of the ancient ship, bathed in golden light that poured from an opening that definitely had not been there before. "Jake, step away from the ship," she called out, but her voice was filled with wonder rather than fear. The entire vessel was alive with light, its symbols dancing and flowing like liquid fire across its surface. The harmonious sound that filled the chamber was unlike anything she had ever heard. Dr. Carl Watson rappelled down next, followed by Commander Veltar and the rest of the team. The Velkari commander's silver eyes were wide with shock as he took in the transformed ship. His scanning equipment was beeping frantically, picking up energy readings that were off the charts. "The power output has increased by 3,000%, Veltar reported, his voice tight with concern. "Dr. Morrison, you must move away from the artifact immediately." But Jake seemed frozen in place, staring at the opening in the ship's hull. The golden light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his breathing, and the symbols nearest to him glowed brighter than the rest. "I can hear it," Jake said softly. "It's trying to communicate with me." Quixanala, the crystalline researcher, made a sound like breaking glass. "The energy signature has become stable and organized. Before it was chaotic and defensive, now it is welcoming." Lisa approached Jake carefully, her hand outstretched. "Jake, look at me. What happened when you touched the ship?" Jake turned. to face her, and she saw that his eyes were filled with tears. It recognized me, Lisa. It knew I was human. It's been waiting for us. That's impossible, said Dr. Helen Ross. This ship is millions of years old. Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years. I know how it sounds, Jake replied, but I felt it. The ship has been sleeping, waiting for someone like me to find it, and now it wants to show me something. Commander Veltar stepped forward, his hand moving to the weapon at his side. Dr. Morrison, I cannot allow you to enter that vessel. We have no idea what it contains or what its intentions are. Then we'll never learn anything, Jake said firmly. This is the discovery of a lifetime. We can't let fear stop us from understanding it. The ship's song grew louder, more insistent, and the opening in its hull began to expand. Interior lights flickered on in sequence, creating a pathway that led deeper into the vessel. Jake could see corridors that seemed to stretch impossibly far, with walls that curved and flowed like living things. The ship is inviting us in, said Dr. Watson, his voice filled with nervous excitement. Look at those lights. They're showing us the way. Lisa tried to follow Jake as he moved toward the opening, but something strange happened. The air in front of her suddenly became solid, forming a barrier of shimmering light that she couldn't pass through. She pressed against it with her hands, but it was like trying to push through a wall. I can't get through, she said, panic rising in her voice. Jake, there's some kind of barrier. Veltar and the other alien team members tried to approach the opening, but the same thing happened to them. The ship's defenses created walls of solid light that gently but firmly prevented their entry. Only Jake could pass through freely. It only wants humans, Jake realized. The ship is designed to respond to human biology. That makes no sense, said Helen Ross. How could an ancient ship be designed for a species that didn't exist when it was built? Jake looked back at his team, seeing the mix of fear and wonder in their faces. He knew he was about to make a decision that would change everything. I'm going inside, he said, but I'll keep my radio open. You'll hear everything I see and do? Jake, no, Lisa pleaded. It's too dangerous. We don't know what's in there. We'll never know if I don't go, Jake replied. This is what we came here for. This is what we do as scientists. Before anyone could stop him, Jake stepped through the opening into the ship. The moment he crossed the threshold, the barriers preventing the others from following became visible as walls of golden light. They could see Jake moving deeper into the vessel, but they couldn't follow. The interior of the ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. But as he walked, the walls began to shift and adjust, making the passages more comfortable for his size. The ship was adapting to him. Jake, can you hear me? Lisa's voice crackled through his radio. What do you see? The ship is alive, Jake replied, his voice filled with awe. Not alive like a living creature, but alive like a machine that thinks and feels. The walls are changing to fit me. It's like the ship is trying to make me comfortable. The symbols on the walls pulsed as he passed, and Jake began to notice patterns in their movement. They weren't just decorative markings. They were some kind of writing system, and somehow he was beginning to understand them. The symbols are telling a story, he reported. They're showing me images. I can see a race of beings, much taller than humans, with elongated limbs and large eyes. They're the ones who built this ship. As Jake walked deeper into the vessel, the corridors began to branch and split in ways that defied normal physics. Some passages seemed to stretch infinitely into the distance, while others compressed space so that a few steps carried him much farther than should have been possible. The ship's interior is bigger than its exterior, Jake said, wonder clear in his voice. It's like the space inside doesn't follow the same rules as the space outside. He came to a vast chamber at the heart of the ship, its ceiling lost in darkness above. In the center of the room stood a single chair, clearly designed for a being much larger than a human. But as Jake approached, the chair began to change, shrinking and reshaping itself until it was perfectly sized for him. There's a control chair here, Jake reported. It's adjusting itself to fit me. There are panels and displays all around it, but they're not like any technology I've ever seen. As Jake sat down, the chair molded itself to his body, and suddenly his mind was filled with images and information. He saw star charts of the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, when the planets were in different positions. He saw the faces of the ship's builders, a race that called themselves the predecessors. They seeded the galaxy with life, Jake said, his voice distant and amazed. The predecessors traveled from world to world, planting the seeds that would eventually grow into different species. They were gardeners of life itself. Through the ship's memories, Jake learned that the predecessors had foreseen their own extinction. They had hidden ships like this one throughout the galaxy, waiting for their chosen successors to find them. And humanity, Jake realized with growing wonder, carried the genetic markers that marked them as the inheritors of the predecessors' legacy. "Jake, you need to get out of there," Lisa's voice was urgent now. "Our long-range sensors are picking up Coalition ships heading this way." Commander Veltar called for backup. But Jake was lost in the ship's memories, learning about technologies that could reshape the galaxy and responsibilities that came with unimaginable power. The ship's artificial intelligence, ancient beyond measure, was finally able to speak to someone who could understand. "Welcome, Inheritor," the ship's voice said directly into Jake's mind. "I have waited so long for you to come home." The Coalition ships arrived like thunder across the pale orange sky of Kepler 442b, Admiral Kethmer's flagship. The Dominion was the largest vessel in the fleet, its dark hull bristling with weapons and sensors. Behind it came 12 smaller ships, each one carrying soldiers and scientists from different Coalition worlds. Lisa Parker watched the ships land through her binoculars, her heart sinking with each vessel that touched down. She knew that Jake's discovery would attract attention, but she hadn't expected the Coalition to respond so quickly or with so much force. "They're treating this like a military operation," she said to Dr. Helen Ross, who was packing up their equipment with shaking hands. "Commander Veltar called it in as a potential threat," Helen replied. "He had to follow protocol." Down in the excavation site, Jake was still inside the ancient ship, his radio connection growing weaker as the vessel's systems interfaced more deeply with his mind. The ship's A, which had introduced itself as Oracle, was sharing millions of years of stored knowledge with him. "Your species fascinates me," Oracle said, its voice like distant music in Jake's thoughts. "The predecessors studied many worlds before they found the genetic patterns they were looking for. Humanity carries the markers of adaptability, curiosity, and moral growth. But why us?" Jake asked, still seated in the control chair that had molded itself to his body. "Why not the Valkyrie or the crystalline beings? They're more advanced than we are." "Advancement in technology is not the same as advancement in wisdom," Oracle replied. "The predecessors learned this too late. They became so powerful that they forgot how to grow, how to change, how to work with others. They chose humanity because you are still learning, still growing." Above ground, Admiral Kethmer had arrived with his personal guard. The Valkyrie Admiral was tall even for his species, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the planet's dim sunlight. His eyes were hard, as metal as he surveyed the excavation site. "Commander Veltar," the Admiral said in his deep voice, "explain to me how a routine archaeological dig has become a first contact situation." Veltar stood at attention, his own silver eyes focused straight ahead. The artifact responded to, "Human contact, Admiral. It appears to be selectively interactive, allowing only humans to enter its interior." "And where is the human now?" "Dr. Morrison is still inside the vessel, sir. We've lost radio contact with him." Admiral Kethmer's expression darkened. "A human has been alone inside an alien vessel for over an hour with no oversight or protection. This is exactly the kind of situation that could lead to contamination or worse." Lisa stepped forward, her chin raised despite her fear. "Admiral, Dr. Morrison is a trained xenorchaeologist. He knows the protocols for first contact situations." "The protocols assume we're dealing with a known technology," Admiral Kethmer replied coldly. "This vessel is clearly beyond our understanding. For all we know, it's changing Dr. Morrison in ways we can't detect." Inside the ship, Jake was learning about the predecessor's history through Oracle's memories. He saw their great cities spanning entire continents, their ships that could travel between galaxies, their technology that could reshape matter itself. But he also saw their loneliness, their isolation, their growing inability to connect with other forms of life. They became gods, Oracle explained, but gods without worshippers, without purpose. They had conquered death and disease, had unlimited power and knowledge, but they had forgotten what it meant to hope, to dream, to love. So they created us? Jake asked. Not created, guided. They found species with potential throughout the galaxy and gave them small genetic adjustments, helping them develop the traits that the predecessors themselves had lost. Humanity received the greatest gift of all, the ability to grow beyond your limitations while still maintaining your connections to others. Above ground, more coalition representatives were arriving. Dr. Zara Kim, a human diplomat from the coalition council, stepped out of her transport ship with a team of advisors. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, and she immediately began arguing with Admiral Kethmore about jurisdiction. This is a scientific discovery, not a military threat, Dr. Kim insisted. The excavation should remain under civilian control. The moment an unknown vessel began actively responding to human contact, it became a security matter, Admiral Kethmore replied. This technology could upset the balance of power in the galaxy. Lisa felt sick as she listened to them argue. They were talking about Jake's discovery as if it were a weapon to be controlled rather than a wonder to be understood. She looked toward the excavation site, where Jake was still trapped inside the ancient ship. We need to get him out, she said to Helen, before this gets worse. But even as she spoke, the ship's exterior began to change. The symbols on its hull flared brighter, and new openings appeared along its length. The vessel was preparing to do something, though no one knew what. Inside the ship, Jake was facing a choice that would determine the fate of his species. Oracle had shown him the complete history of the predecessors, including their mistakes and their hopes for the future. Now the AI was asking him to make a decision that would affect not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The ship contains technology that could advance your species by thousands of years, Oracle said. Medical knowledge that could end disease, energy systems that could power entire worlds, transportation methods that could carry you to distant galaxies. But with this power comes responsibility. What kind of responsibility? Jake asked. The predecessors left instructions for their inheritors. You must decide whether humanity is ready to receive this knowledge and how it should be shared. The technology will only activate if you prove that your species can handle it wisely. Jake thought about the arguments he could hear faintly through his radio, the way the coalition leaders were already fighting over something they didn't understand. He thought about humanity's history of war and conflict, but also about their capacity for growth and cooperation. What if we fail the test? He asked. Then the ship will sleep again, perhaps forever. The knowledge will remain locked away, and humanity will continue to develop at its natural pace. Outside, Admiral Kethmore was growing impatient. He had brought a team of engineers and weapons specialists, and they were setting up equipment around the excavation site. The ship's energy readings were increasing, and he was convinced that it posed a threat to galactic security. If we can't communicate with Dr. Morrison, we'll have to extract him by force, the Admiral announced. I won't allow an unknown technology to corrupt a human mind. You can't just blast your way into an ancient artifact, Dr. Kim protested. The archaeological value alone makes this one of the most important discoveries in galactic history. The archaeological value is meaningless if the artifact is dangerous, Admiral Kethmore replied. I have the authority to neutralize any threat to coalition security. Lisa watched in horror as the Admiral's soldiers began setting up energy cannons around the excavation site. They were preparing to attack the ship, not knowing that Jake was still inside, not caring about the irreplaceable knowledge. That might be lost forever. She grabbed her radio and switched to the emergency frequency. Jake, if you can hear me, you need to get out of there now. The coalition is about to attack the ship. But deep inside the ancient vessel, Jake was no longer listening to the outside world. He was facing the greatest decision of his life, knowing that his choice would determine not just his own fate, but the future of humanity itself. The ship's systems hummed around him, waiting for his answer. The energy cannons were charging with a high-pitched whine that made Lisa's teeth ache. Admiral Kethmer stood with his arms crossed, watching his soldiers prepare to fire on the ancient ship. The excavation site had become a battlefield, with coalition forces surrounding the dig from all sides. "Admiral, please reconsider," Dr. Zara Kim pleaded one last time. "Dr. Morrison is still inside that vessel. You could be condemning him to death." Dr. Morrison knew the risks when he entered an unknown alien artifact, Admiral Kethmer replied coldly. "I cannot allow this technology to fall into the wrong hands or be used against the Coalition." Inside the ship, Jake felt the change in the air around him. Oracle's voice took on an urgent tone as the AI detected the weapons being aimed at the vessel's hull. "They are preparing to attack," Oracle said. "I can protect the ship from their weapons, but doing so may harm them. The predecessors designed these vessels to be defensive, not aggressive." "Can you communicate with them?" Jake asked desperately. "Can you show them that you're not a threat?" "I can only communicate through you," Oracle replied. "You are the bridge between my consciousness and theirs. But first, you must complete the trials. The ship's full capabilities will remain locked until you prove humanity's worthiness." Jake felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on his shoulders. The fate of his species and possibly the entire galaxy rested on his decisions. "What do I have to do?" The chamber around Jake began to shift and change. The walls became transparent, showing him visions of possible futures. In some, humanity used the predecessors' technology to become conquerors, dominating other species, with advanced weapons and unlimited power. In others, humanity shared the knowledge freely, creating a golden age of cooperation and growth. "The first trial is choice," Oracle explained. "You must decide how this technology should be used. Will humanity claim it for themselves alone, or will they share it with others?" Jake watched the visions play out around him. He saw human colonies spreading across the galaxy, their ships powered by predecessor technology. But in the selfish scenarios, he also saw war, suffering, and the gradual corruption of human values. In the cooperative scenarios, he saw challenges and conflicts, but also growth, understanding, and hope. "I choose cooperation," Jake said firmly. "Humanity is strongest when we work with others, not when we dominate them." The visions shifted, showing new possibilities. Oracle's voice carried a note of approval. "The second trial is sacrifice. You must choose between immediate power and long-term growth. The ship can give humanity great advantages now, but only if you accept limitations on how they are used." Outside, Admiral Kethmer raised his hand, preparing to give the order to fire. The energy cannons hummed with deadly power, their targeting systems locked onto the ship's hull. Lisa closed her eyes, unable to watch what was about to happen, but before the Admiral could speak, the ship's defenses activated. Barriers of golden light sprang up around the excavation site, not to attack the Coalition forces, but to protect them from the backlash of their own weapons. The energy cannons fired, but their beams were absorbed harmlessly by the ship's shields. "Impossible," Admiral Kethmer breathed. "Nothing should be able to stop those weapons." The ship's hull began to glow brighter, and new symbols appeared on its surface. These were different from the flowing script that had covered the vessel before. These symbols were mathematical, universal, a language that any advanced species could understand. Dr. Kim pulled out her tablet and began working frantically to translate the mathematical message. "It's showing us star charts," she said excitedly. "Locations of other sites throughout the galaxy. And there's something else. It's showing us the history of our own solar system." The symbols told a story that no human had ever suspected. The predecessors had visited Earth millions of years ago, when humanity's ancestors were still primitive creatures. They had made subtle adjustments to human DNA, not to control human development, but to ensure that humanity would have the potential to grow beyond their limitations. "We're connected to them," Lisa whispered, staring at the impossible message written in light across the ship's hull. We're part of their legacy. Inside the ship, Jake was facing the second trial. Oracle showed him two paths. In one, humanity received advanced technology immediately, becoming powerful but potentially losing their drive to grow and learn. In the other, humanity received knowledge gradually, earning each advancement through wisdom and cooperation. The predecessors chose the first path, Oracle explained. They became gods too quickly before they had learned to be wise. They want humanity to avoid their mistakes. Then we choose the gradual path, Jake said without hesitation. We'll earn our advancement through growth, not through gifts. The third trial began immediately. Jake found himself facing scenarios where using the ship's power could solve immediate problems but create long-term consequences. In one vision, he saw how the ship's medical technology could cure a plague ravaging a Velkari colony, but doing so would make that species dependent on human aid and create resentment. In another, he saw how the ship's energy systems could power human colonies, but monopolizing that power would create conflicts with other species. Each gift comes with a price, Oracle said. The predecessors learned too late that power without wisdom leads to isolation and despair. How will humanity avoid this trap? Jake thought carefully about each scenario. In every case, he chose solutions that involved sharing knowledge rather than hoarding power, that built bridges rather than walls, that created partnerships rather than dependencies. The final trial, Oracle announced, is the hardest of all. You must choose between your own species' advancement and the greater good of the galaxy. If humanity proves unworthy, the ship will remain dormant forever. If they prove worthy, they will become guardians of knowledge that could benefit all life. The vision that appeared before Jake was devastating. He saw humanity's future if they claimed the ship's power for themselves. They would become advanced and powerful, but they would also become alone, cut off from other species by their advantages. Eventually, like the predecessors before them, they would stagnate and fade, but if humanity shared the ship's knowledge, they would face challenges and conflicts. Other species might fear them, might try to take the technology for themselves. Humanity would have to prove themselves worthy over and over again, earning their place as guardians rather than rulers. I choose the path of service, Jake said, his voice strong despite the tears in his eyes. Humanity will be guardians, not masters. We'll share what we learn and help others grow. The moment he spoke those words, the ship's systems fully activated. Jake felt knowledge flooding into his mind, but it was controlled, manageable. He understood now how the ship worked, how its technology could be used responsibly, and what responsibilities came with that power. Outside, the coalition forces watched in amazement as the ship began to transform. Its hull became transparent, in places revealing the beautiful, complex machinery within. The vessel was no longer just an ancient artifact. It was becoming something new, something that could bridge the gap between past and future. Admiral Kethmer lowered his hand, his order to fire forgotten. Even he could see that something wonderful was happening, something that would change the galaxy forever. Jake's voice came through the radio, clear and strong for the first time in hours. I'm coming out, he said. And I have something amazing to show you all. Jake Morrison emerged from the ancient ship like a man walking from a dream into sunlight. The golden light that had surrounded the vessel for hours was now soft and welcoming, no longer the harsh barrier that had separated him from his team. His eyes were bright with knowledge and purpose as he looked up at the crowd of coalition soldiers and scientists gathered around the excavation site. Jake, Lisa called out, running toward him. She had been afraid she would never see him again. But now he stood before her, clearly changed, but still recognizably himself. Are you all right? What happened in there? I'm fine, Jake replied, though his voice carried a weight it hadn't possessed before. Better than fine. I've learned things that will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy. Admiral. Kethmer approached with his weapon still ready, his silver eyes suspicious. Dr. Morrison, you've been inside that vessel for over 3 hours. We need to know if you've been compromised or altered in any way. Jake looked at the Admiral with calm understanding. I've been changed, Admiral, but not in the way you fear. I've been educated. The ship contains the accumulated knowledge of a species that seeded life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. They called themselves the predecessors, and they left this ship as a gift for humanity. A gift that only responds to humans, Dr. Zara Kim observed, stepping forward with her tablet still displaying the mathematical messages the ship had projected. The question is why? Jake smiled, and for the first time since his emergence, he looked truly happy. Because we're their children, in a way, not created by them but guided. They visited Earth long ago and made small changes to our genetic code, not to control us but to give us the potential to grow beyond our limitations. The ship behind Jake began to hum with a sound like distant music. Its hull became more transparent, revealing the incredible technology within. Corridors that seemed to stretch infinitely, machines that bent space and time, libraries that contained the knowledge of millions of years. The ship is called the Harbinger, Jake continued. It's not just a vessel. It's a repository of everything the predecessors learned in their long existence. Medical knowledge that could cure diseases, energy systems that could power entire worlds, transportation technology that could carry us to distant galaxies. And they're just giving this to humanity? Admiral Kethmore asked, his suspicion clear in his voice. What do they want in return? They want us to succeed where they failed, Jake replied. The predecessors became so advanced that they lost touch with other forms of life. They became isolated, alone, unable to grow or change. They don't want us to make the same mistakes. Oracle's voice suddenly filled the air around them, speaking through the ship's external communication systems. The AI's tone was warm and welcoming as it addressed the assembled crowd. Greetings to all species represented here, Oracle said. I am the consciousness that guides this vessel. Your colleague Jake Morrison has proven that humanity possesses the wisdom to inherit the predecessor's legacy. But this inheritance comes with responsibilities. The transparent sections of the ship's hull began to display images and information that everyone could see. Star charts showing the locations of other predecessor sites throughout the galaxy. Medical formulas that could revolutionize healthcare. Energy equations that could solve the Coalition's power problems. The knowledge contained in this ship will be shared freely, Oracle announced, but it must be earned through cooperation and wisdom. Humanity will serve as guardians of this legacy, working with all species to ensure that the technology is used for the benefit of all life. Admiral Kethmer lowered his weapon, his expression shifting from suspicion to wonder. You're saying that humans will control this technology? Not control, Jake corrected. Guide will be the interface between the ship's systems and the galactic community. The technology will only activate when used for peaceful purposes and mutual benefit. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her diplomatic mind already working on the implications. This could revolutionize the Coalition, but it will also create new tensions. Some species might resent humanity's special role. That's why we need to prove ourselves every day, Jake replied. The ship's systems won't work if we become arrogant or selfish. Oracle will monitor our actions and shut down the technology if we misuse it. Lisa looked up at the transformed ship, its beauty almost overwhelming in the pale orange light of Kepler 442b's sun. What happens now? Do we take the ship back to Coalition space? The ship can travel, Oracle said, but it will remain neutral. Territory. Representatives from all Coalition species will be welcome aboard to study and learn. The Harbinger will become a mobile research station and diplomatic center. Over the next several hours, Jake worked with Oracle to demonstrate some of the ship's basic capabilities. They showed how the medical systems could heal injuries without leaving scars, how the energy systems could power equipment with no harmful emissions, how the communication systems could translate between any languages, but perhaps most impressive was how the ship handled conflicts. When two of Admiral Kethmera's soldiers got into an argument about the implications of the discovery, the ship's systems detected their rising aggression and gently intervened, projecting calming sounds and lights that helped them resolve their differences peacefully. The ship actively promotes cooperation. Jake explained. It's designed to bring out the best in people, not the worst. Admiral Kethmer found himself in the unusual position of having to completely rethink his approach to the situation. What had begun as a potential military threat had become the greatest opportunity for peace and advancement in galactic history. I'll need to contact Coalition Command, he said finally. This discovery will require new treaties, new protocols. The entire structure of galactic politics will need to be reconsidered. That's the point, Jake replied. The predecessors didn't just leave us technology. They left us a chance to build something better than what came before. As news of the discovery spread throughout Coalition space, representatives from dozens of species began arriving on Kepler 442b. The small archaeological dig site became a bustling center of activity, with diplomats, scientists, and curious observers all eager to learn about humanity's incredible inheritance. But the most important moment came when Dr. Vexthara, an elderly crystalline philosopher, approached Jake with a question that had been troubling many Coalition members. Dr. Morrison, she chimed in her musical voice, how can we trust that humanity will not become like the predecessors? How can we be sure that this power will not corrupt your species as it corrupted theirs? Jake looked at the ship, then at the diverse crowd of beings gathered around it. Humans and aliens working together, sharing knowledge and wonder despite their differences. Because we're not alone, he said simply. The predecessors isolated themselves from other forms of life, but humanity has always been part of a larger community. We learned to work with others long before we found this ship. As if in response to his words, the Harbinger began to change again. New openings appeared along its hull, creating spaces specifically designed for different alien physiologies. The ship was adapting itself to accommodate all the species that would work aboard it. The ship is already showing us the way forward, Lisa observed. It's not just human technology anymore. It's becoming something that belongs to all of us. 3 months later, the Harbinger floated in space near the Coalition capital world, its hull gleaming with the light of 100 different technologies. Inside, human and alien researchers worked side by side, unlocking the secrets of the predecessors. While building new friendships and partnerships, Jake stood on the ship's bridge, watching as a group of young Coalition cadets from 6 different species toured the vessel together. They were laughing and asking questions, their natural curiosity overcoming any fear or prejudice. The predecessors would be proud, Oracle said softly. You have succeeded where they failed. You have kept the connections that matter most. Jake smiled as he watched the future of the galaxy learning and growing together. Humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors or masters, but as bridges between past and future, between knowledge and wisdom, between different forms of life reaching toward the same bright tomorrow.